Loud. The suit was used to loud, but not music. The suit hated music. Yet this was his normal routine, which entailed meeting up with his plug. Having a lot of money meant the suit could indulge in the more designer of celebrants. Business as usual, the caveat here was that he was looking for another service. Mikey B had always boasted of being able to plug anything, usually weed and cocaine, but it was worth a shot for the suit to find his bliss. A simple sexual favor, for a price happily paid. Problem was most of those internet strumpets weren't willing to indulge his fantasy. The suit needed to find the right one to accept his handsome offer. The cocaine dealer was worth a try. He was a loyal customer after all. A man who had always gotten what he wanted. This was a simple business inquiry. It was simply the rendering of a miscellaneous service. He could write it off on his taxes, the wife wouldn't even know of it. The suit didn't like being so out of place amongst the young partygoers, but he could always find Mikey B here, among the loud music and loose women. He was never too pleased to have to pay a cover charge, but Mikey B didn't make house calls. Drug dealers were seldom professional that way, not like stockbrokers. He was pleased to find Mikey B where he usually sat perched near the bar. A few of the regulars surrounding him. One of the new girls asked the suit if he wanted a drink. He ignored her. Mikey B was certainly no stockbroker, but he did have a good sense of lucrative opportunities, which is why he came straight over to greet the suit. Charismatic too. Mikey B would make a fine salesman in any trade, astute of him to do so in such a burgeoning market as drugs. High risk, high reward, same as the stock market. The suit learned that the best way to be a good criminal was to hide in plain sight. A man could find few ideal places other than the Big Apple. Here they were in some flashy club. The city that never sleeps. The cocaine would certainly make that true for the suit. Mikey B was smart, didn't mix business with pleasure, even though he made the suit frequent this trashy place too far from his posh living accommodations. They went to the bathroom. It was big, and surprisingly not too disgusting, although the smell of stale piss and beer hung in the air. They were alone, the perfect moment to strike. He was a man of business, straight to the point. Get the mutual transaction out of the way, and then inquire about a possible new deal. The normal deal went quickly, and as usual. He had his cocaine, and Mikey B had his money. No doubt most of it went to some kingpin, but that didn't matter. Mikey B had connections. And so he made his inquiry. He said very straightforward that he was looking for a prostitute. He had no need for euphemisms. He made it clear to Mikey B that he was looking for one that would do anything, given the right price. He had a very specific need. He was cautious not to specify it to Mikey B. Of course, he was just inquiring about where he might meet such talent. Then he would have cash in hand. Whores were always more agreeable when they saw a stack of Benjamins. Mikey B seemed a bit quizzical at first. He laughed it off after a moment and thought. He was a man of pride, Mikey B was. He didn't want to let down a loyal customer, and so he sent a text message out. He got a reply shortly after, and a prideful smile grew on his face. Yeah, I know a girl. She isn't big time or anything, but I know she is willing to discuss terms over, what it is and how much. And that was the conversation he eagerly awaited. A thankful goodbye, all business. Mikey B had a stern handshake. The suit was rather fond of him. He set out, back through the noise. It was hard to maintain a low profile being a suit among a bunch of underage drinkers. Luckily the bouncers were more concerned with the latter, and so he was never met with any resistance. Break. It would be a glutinous night for the king. He was pleased when the lights went out at the food place. Much better than any dumpster. He perked up to think of all of the lesser rats, the ones in the sewers, fighting for scraps. He was bigger than all of them. The king had found his kingdom among the big ones, just out of sight. Most of the time at least. He was able to sustain himself greedily on dry goods and cardboard. Eventually he grew big and strong, and even the big ones were afraid of him. What luck could a rat ask for in this city? But the king didn't ask, he took to his heart's content. He was the worthy, the one who beat the traps, and the bad. He who fucked more rat pussy than any other lesser rat living in the subway. To the king it was paradise. He was territorial, of course. The more rats that came here, the less plenty there would be for him. He didn't like sharing. This was his sanctuary from the cold streets, and it had been good to him. He was hopeful for tonight. Once the lights went out, he knew he was safe to indulge. There were a few times a few of the big ones came around after lights out to hunt him. They always failed. The king was cunning, far more so than them, who haplessly tried to fool him with the bad powder. He would sometimes invite a lesser rat to join in his feast. A sort of bad taste tester. He would sit back for a while, and if the other rat died, then he ate the cardboard. The king was too smart to risk his own stomach. Later he learned that if he ate only a small bit of bad, he would feel sick, but after a while it didn't affect him. The king had become tolerant, as he grew bigger than the others. That was why he was the king. Tonight would be no different. He was excited. His recent exploration had shown him a loose gasket on the cold box. The best food was in there. He gnawed with his wicked teeth, until he could squeeze through the seal. A rat could fit in many places. The king used this ability quite well. Now he would be rewarded for it. The cold box was replete with foodstuff. No cardboard tonight. There was a loose opened box on a top shelf, sort of hanging. The big ones were not wont to secure their goods. And so the king bashed into the metal shelf, dropping the poorly balanced box. Cheesecake. What luck the king had. Cheesecake was his favorite. He heard the big ones use those words. Cheesecake. They even put one in the cage once, but the king knew not to tempt fate. He ate, until he could not eat any more, and scurried away. All that was left of the cheesecake was the walnut garnish. The king did not like walnuts. They had only been in the city for a few days. Just a change, run away from Middle America. They didn't want to be a model, or a Broadway star. They just wanted a change. Their family had no legacy, small-minded. They often dreamed of skyscrapers. So they left a note, and drove here. They sold their car for cash in hand. They didn't come entirely on their own though. They had a cousin who said they could stay at his place. They had a few garbage bags filled with their belongings. Mostly clothes. They had been job hunting. What's the best way to make money in New York City, they wondered. They weren't opposed to the idea of stripping, but it turns out the laws were different here. No booze if Bush is involved, and that meant less tips. They didn't have much experience, a barista for maybe 2.5 years. Still, Middle America was not so busy as this city. They could bartend, maybe. They tried the high-end restaurants first. They asked her if she knew anything about wine. They told them that Dry Minute didn't have sugar. They thanked her for her time. They eventually found a pizzeria that was hiring, a bit dingy, but it seemed like their only option. I'll work here so I can get by, and once I learn, I can go somewhere better, they thought to themselves. The interview wasn't really an interview. They had walked in, and the pizza guy asked if she had experience. 3 years, they lied. He asked for her name and number. They got a call only a few hours later. Short-staffed, said the man with a blended accent. They put on their black leggings, and a black blouse, the one they used to barista in. They were happy to have found a job. They had told a bit of a white lie to get in, but sometimes you need to, right? They steeled themselves with the resolve of a professional. The same pizza man from that morning greeted them as they approached the counter. You are new counter girl, yes? They smiled enthusiastically and nodded. Good, good, you train with Tanya tonight. Make good tip. You stick around, more better tip. They nodded again, as he pointed them to the back of house. Tanya was having a smoke break. It lasted 2 cigarettes. They amicably approached to shake the smoker's hand. No need for names, kid. You don't look like you'll last a week. Do you know what our turnover rate is? Never mind, rhetorical. Tanya introduced them to the staff. The pizza guy was Gustavo. He didn't talk much, bad English. The back end was a little more interesting, however. In the kitchen they met Nico, Tony, and Mikey B. They gave them pleasantries. They were to shadow Tanya and learn the ropes. At one point they went to drop a bus bin of dishes in the kitchen sink. "Hey new girl, we got some dead fries over here, you hungry?" They weren't quite sure if they should. They told them they had to get back to the dining room. "Bullshit, Holmes. You can talk to us, don't you want the real rundown?" It was the one named Nico. He looked like a hippie gangster, his hair was long and greasy. He wore a hairnet. "I suppose," they said reluctantly. "What was your name again?" "Here, come have some fries, it's slow right now." They repeated their name to them, and snacked on the fries, thankfully. "Did they warn you about Lucifer yet?" Nico again. He was friendly, if not forward. "Quit trying to scare her, it's her first day." "Sorry Christine. He likes to flirt with the girls, that's why we don't ever have any help around here." They smiled at the acknowledgement. They liked Mike. They were still curious about Lucifer though. Biggest I've ever seen. Even bigger for a country girl. "We call him Lucifer. That fucker has been haunting us for years." "A rat." Lucifer was a rat, and a big one. Chris didn't mind. Sure, a place like this might have rats, but at least it was just one, right? They waved it off, trying to look big. Mike gave them a concerned look as they continued to listen to the epic tales of Lucifer, Lord of the Rodents. Apparently he had found a way into the walk-in last night. Chewed right through the gasket. Almost an entire cheesecake devoured, save for the walnuts. Lucifer didn't like walnuts. Nico went on to tell them a story about how he had confronted Lucifer, and nearly smashed him with the pizza peel. Alas, Lucifer was an agile devil. Tony washed dishes as they spoke. He chimed in to laugh, he liked the Lucifer stories. Mike added his 2 cents, but in a way that tamed the story. It wasn't long before Tanya came looking for her. "Hey newbie, Two Top just came in, you think you can handle it? I'm gonna go have a smoke." They had an interesting day to say the least. At closing time everyone congregated at the bar. "Shift drinks." They couldn't tell who said it. "You haven't been in the city long, have you?" It was Mike. They liked Mike, and so they had a drink with him. They all drank, and after a few they all went to a nearby bar, open late. They thought to themselves, the city that never sleeps. For once they didn't regret coming here, not like some Hollywood hopeful. They just wanted to be among the skyscrapers. Tilda. Of all the scantily clad places in New York, his favorite was here, Snuggles. A stupid name for a stupid place to get underage kids drunk. It was also a great den for other illegal activity, and he knew that very well. He was a plug after all. Mostly cocaine and weed, but he branched out where needed. He took a shot. They all did. Christine was cute. He was quite the charmer, maybe one of the reasons the front-end girls quit so often. That wasn't his problem though, and she kept eyeing him like a target. Open season. And so they got drunk, and it was allowed, and they danced. Christine stuck close to Mikey B. He was after all the most attractive and personable body available. She was fun, he thought. Nico and Tony went outside to smoke weed. "We should join them." He said it as a statement. She was already on his teat, so they went, and they smoked as a group. She was a lightweight. A real farm girl. He thought it was kind of cool, how she just up and moved here like that. She was a wild card, and he was the ace of spades. "We didn't tell you about Screamin' Al yet, beautiful." It was Nico. Nico came up with the nickname, and so he loved to showcase it. "Screamin' Al? Who is that?" she asked politely. "The boss. Scary guy. If I was in a room with him and Lucifer, I'd pick the rat Holmes." Tony spit his drink out laughing. "Simpleton." He chimed in, "I said don't scare Christine, dude. She's new to the city, and we all know Screamin' Al is an ironic nickname. Nico looked pissed. You're no fun. You like fun, Christine. This guy's no fun. She stammered before speaking, I prefer Chris. They were surprised. That's the most direct thing you've said tonight, Chris. He said, proudly. Chris is a boy's name. Anthony started to giggle over his double vodka. Chris looked unhurt, like they were holding back their emotions. He pulled them aside. Hey Chris, I'm sorry I didn't ask you earlier. What are your pronouns? Chris said, they, them. He wasn't too shocked. You haven't been here long, have you? They grabbed his shirt and hugged tight. He continued, I get it, a lot more forward-thinking over here than whatever farm you were on. No offense, let me walk you home. It was a first for Mikey B, but he respected them. He preferred to be called Mikey B, not Mike, not Mikey, he was in fact Mikey B. So why should Christine not have the right to be called Chris? Why should they have to constantly be reminded of their presumed features? He walked them home, they shared an embrace, and a late-night taco from a food truck. Hey Holmes, you got any more green? Tony shook his head from side to side, as he swayed walking. Restaurant, I hid it behind the oregano. He laughed to himself after the phrase. I've gotta keep happy, let's go on in. Tony swayed his head up and down this time, maybe we'll see Lucifer. Tilda. The vegan was always an early bird, quick to the worm. Of course she would never eat a worm. God's creatures were off the menu. Not even honey in her tea. She was a progressive. She prided herself in her Yelp reviews and her gospel. She was dressed, her organic makeup on by 7 a.m. She always looked forward to lunch, a chance to lord her holy ways over those that salted their meats. Disgusting. She believed, if you were to simply boil a meat product, no spices, it would be appalling. She worked until lunch break. She had no favorite cuisine in this city, but she did not always have a chance to cook organic food for herself. Gross, she only had time to get a quick bite from the pizzeria down the street. Paradise it was called, as if, she thought. Paradise Pizza was where she would dine, however. Little choice. She walked there. She had trouble losing weight, and the vegan diet has yet to help with it, so she didn't mind walking. A salad, with chickpeas and roasted red peppers sounded much to her delight. The restaurant itself was not an ideal choice, but she could not turn water into wine. She was devout in her sense that Jesus, if resurrected again, would be a vegan. The counter girl was new. As usual. This place had no loyalty. She was a friend of the owner, Alan. He had given her many credits in the past, and so she put up with the vagabond employees. This one looked like she hardly worked a day in her life, probably a Broadway hopeful playing waitress until her dreams were realized. She smiled nice, a facade to be sure. Salad. Vegan. I want chickpeas and roasted peppers. No dressing, I don't trust it. The girl struggled to find the buttons in the system. She had to call the other girl over, Taylor or something, she was a stupid bitch. But whatever her name was sent the order through. 10 minutes. She gave them a condescending smile. Rats. She thought of them as rats. She paid ahead, and did not tip. Tilda. The vegan. Tanya whispered as they entered the kitchen. Total bitch. She went to high school with Screamin' Al, so we play nice. She always complains, no friend I've ever known. You did good, it's always hard to punch in her order. She looked at the girl. She seemed taken aback, that's okay. You nervous? You ain't bad for a country girl, what's up Christine? The girl was a bit stoic, like she had a wall up. Tanya liked her as good as the next, somebody needs to cover Sunday brunch after all. Look, I'll deal with the vegan, you do some side work, okay? The compromise was acceptable, but Tanya could see some hurt in the girl's eyes. Did she say something wrong? Tilda. The salad was all wrong. She asked for dressing, she was certain. Not ranch, not Caesar, she wanted oil and vinegar. Who would eat a dry salad, honestly? If she had Alan's personal number she would have called him immediately. An outrage, to be sure. A salad with no dressing, disgusting, same as the lot of those restaurant peons. It was obvious she had to make a complaint. Dressing should be customary, it should be included with the meal. $13.95 after tax and upcharges, yet no dressing. She was still standing at the counter, opening the container to measure its worth. Thank the good Lord she did, or she may have missed the dressing entirely. This is wrong. I asked for oil and vinegar on the side. You didn't give it to me, so I want extra for the mistake. I'm a friend of Alan. And yet again the unwavering got justice from the illiterate and lazy restaurant peons. 2 4-ounce souffle cups of oil and vinegar, of course she would never use it. She didn't trust the kitchen workers there. Tilda. What did you put in it this time? He asked, already laughing. Nico's special ingredient, 100% vegan, Holmes. He thought Nico was going to spit in the dressing again, but they had caught wind that she never used the dressing anyways. Dandruff wouldn't work as Parmesan, was not on a vegan salad, but the chickpeas could be snorted through the nose, and then spit out the mouth. A little salt and pepper on top. The fucking bitch could never tell. Tony loved it. He wanted to do more, but Nico set the rules, and Mikey B always threw water on Nico's flame. Don't fuck with her too much, guys. You know Screamin' Al had a big crush on her in high school. A voice of reason, but he never liked listening to that. He liked chaos, washing dishes, and the legendary Lucifer. Whatever, Nico, did you tell him about the sighting? Mikey B looked at Nico and him quizzically. Oh yeah, Holmes, we heard that motherfucker last night. He's in the walls, man. We tried to scare him out, shit, we even sent pot smoke through the opening. We got Lucifer high, bro. He broke out in laughter. Soon they all did. The vegan was a thing of the past, at least for today. Tilda. It wasn't the first time they cried in a walk-in. Or maybe it was. The last time Chris cried in a walk-in, they were confused. They dislike the name Christine, but they harbor no ill will towards it. They use it as a shield, to guard against those who would prosecute them. They had to be careful back home, always Christine. Pristine Christine, and they hated it. They came here to get past it, that was clear now. Mikey B had been one of few they had told, it was liberating. And yet, here they were in the walk-in bawling their eyes out. Tanya would be cool, and Nico, sure. The vegan? She was a bitch, more transphobic than any countryman to be sure. They started to hate their stupid hair, their stupid face. They hated themselves. Just one more minute, then back to work. A minute wasn't up before the door opened. Girl. Sorry, Chris, it okay if I call you that, honey? It was Tanya. Mikey B must have filled her in. Did he have loose lips? Probably. Fuck that vegan ass clown. She doesn't know you. I don't know you, Chris, but we're a family here. We accept you whether you are straight, gay, blue, black, or gray. You've got a fire inside you, Chris. You came all the way here to get away from that bull gender shit. Their sobbing softened, and that was how they had made a second friend. They bucked up, and got back to work. Tilda. It was too soon to slink in just yet, but the king was ready. He could hide in the ceiling, climb the walls. He could swim across the breadth of a sauce spot left out to cool. The king likes tomatoes, and tomatoes were aplenty in paradise. The time was not opportune, however. The risk was too great. He always kept his beady eyes on any spilling, he was quick in and away when they dropped. The big ones dropped a lot of things. When they didn't, he would venture into the bathroom. It had little to offer, but it was private, and the bins could hold hidden treasure. Every now and again, like clockwork, there would be a pudgy red stick with a string. It wasn't cheesecake, but it tasted coppery. The king once bit a man, it was the taste of red. He wanted to taste the red of the big ones. The pudgy red sticks in the bin would have to suffice. He would come back tomorrow to look again. The pudgy red sticks were due to arrive any day according to the pattern thus far. She agreed through text. A meetup, a business opportunity. That was what she did after all. If Mikey B gave the green light, she would at least talk to the guy. If things went bad, she could always call Jungle. He was her unofficial pimp. They agreed to meet that afternoon. It felt rushed. The guy was some sort of business freak, time is money or whatever. They agreed to meet at a park, somewhere close for her, not him. She didn't normally take clients like this, but he had messaged her some big numbers. Not a fraud, Mikey B had said, based on the coke he was buying. Maybe she would get some, that usually made things easier. She got there, only a few minutes late, the subway was under maintenance. He was for sure a suit, briefcase and all. Stupid glasses, and slick hair. She'd seen worse. They greeted, very business. His eyes kept darting, it made her uncomfortable. She put a hand on his arm. What is it you are looking for, sugar? She was a master of feigning interest. He described his fetish to her. It was very matter of fact. It was upfront, gross, unapologetic. Weird, like the weirdest thing she had ever heard. Weird never stopped her before though. Oh okay. But how much? I'm not going to that for anything less than 4 digits. The man grinned, a wicked lecher's grin. She agreed. To every term. Good money, and it wasn't more foot stuff or anal, so she agreed. He was a colleague of Mikey B. What was the worst that could happen? Tilda. She was ensconced. Yes, finally he had a willing participant. He surely overpaid for the service, but money was not of import here. He guided her off the park bench and into the street. You didn't eat today, or did you? The girl sort of winced. What was her name again? It didn't matter. You will eat, those are my terms. Staunch as the businessman he was. I should tell you something before we do this. Her words trailed off, unsure. He pulled her arm to stop her, impatiently. What? She reared back, ashamed. I used to puke a lot in high school. Her eyes were starting to tear. That's a good thing, you know how to do it then. She cried a bit more, but pulled herself together. I don't have a gag reflex anymore. This was concerning. No gag, no bliss. A businessman can always negotiate. Sometimes you need to know the right person for the job. Mikey B had not let him down in the past, and so he carried the girl further into the dumps. They would make their way to paradise. Mikey B was a man of talent, or pride. Whatever the case, he produced success. The man knew his vocation, specifically his real one. He would simply act a fool, get some last-minute incentives for his fantasy. He rushed the girl forward, into the mix. He saw a large angry woman with a to-go bag in hand. Tilda. After the vegan left, it didn't take long for everyone to come up on them. One by one they laid their praise to Chris, the trans. From Christine, to Chris the trans. At least Mikey got it. They tried to tell everyone it wasn't a big deal. They told them about the time that Van came out to them, a gay. He didn't work there anymore. Tanya was cool. They didn't quite know how to process. They weren't ready for a coming out party, or was it just good gossip? Whatever, it was still better than the vegan, or Lucifer, whom apparently was active last night. In the walls. They felt in the walls too, like Lucifer. Lucifer was the lesser of 2 evils, or 3. They didn't know anymore. How could a rat be a devil, and a person a saint? They certainly weren't. They just needed to get through the shift. They were confused. They like Mikey B. Who likes to be called Mikey B, much like they like to be called Chris, but maybe that's too weird. They cringed a lot. Tilda. He pulled her through the double doors. She relented. The promise of money does that. He wanted her fast. Needed her. He needed her to eat. He escorted her to the counter. 2 orders of lasagna please, for here. The girl looked like she was having trouble. Her short hair made her look like a boy. He didn't usually come here, not usually his stomping grounds, yet Mikey B had provided him with an ideal specimen. He just needed one more thing. The girl was nice enough. Not a city girl, She would never puke for him. He did like her short hair though. She must not have to pull it back when she puked. She put in the order, and he tipped her. Before she retreated he asked for Mikey B. Tilda. He followed them back to the counter. It was the suit, and Sophie. He had pocketed a finder's fee from this creep, but why the hell would he bring her here? What the fuck, man, what is this? He looked at the girl. She shifted her eyes away quickly. Hey Mike. The man asked him if they could step aside. He lead him to the waitress station. What else do you need? This is not the time or place. The man looked apologetic, desperate even. I need one more thing from the man who can get anything. There was a pause. He waited for the businessman to specify. He usually did so duly. Emetics. There it was. He wasn't sure what that meant. The man raised a $20 bill. The last piece of the puzzle. He saw Tanya saunter over, casually making coffee as she eyed them. In English please. He said, but before the man could explain, Tanya snatched the 20 from his hand. I'll be right back. The bitch. Tilda. Emetics. Easy, maybe the easiest 20 she had ever made. She went to the back room, past dry storage. Things were hoarded this far back. Hard to find anything, but her treasure laid in plain sight. An old first aid box. Most of the bandages and burn ointments were gone. Only a few gauze pads, allergy meds, a token sanitizing cloth, and then victory. She knew it was there, of course. She hadn't touched them in years, she wasn't like that anymore. She remembered Sophie had indulged in the ugly habit. She never liked using the back of her toothbrush though. She knew she could induce the act with a simple pill out of a first aid kit. These were fast-acting too. Made sense, first aid and all. She took the small packet back to the man. He was sweaty in his sports jacket, awaiting his own prize. She handed the man the packet, as she turned and rolled her eyes at Mikey B. Tilda. She sat at the table forcing forkful after forkful of lasagna down her throat. She wasn't quite ready to do this here. She knew people here, and the end game of all this, despicable. She tried to think of the money. She would have a chat with Mikey B after this. Tell him to fuck off with weird shit clients, but the money stuck to her skull like glue. Money makes people do wild things, that's all. He didn't ask to film it or anything. A private affair, he did look like the married type. It wouldn't take too long either. It's not every day she could make $5,000 in less than 20 minutes. That was what was good about the specific guys. After she started the second plate she was full to the brim. Still she pressed on, gnashing meat, sauce and cheese in her mouth. It was good at first, maybe a little freezer burned, but now it was cement. It clung to her throat. She sipped water with every bite to hold it down. Think about the money. Pretend you are a gluttonous rat about to hibernate. Maybe she could take a break after this score. Maybe even a vacation. He felt quite annoyed. A second trip, in the light, and nothing. Nothing to munch on this day. He skulked in the shadows, hopefully. It was easy for him to hide amongst the big ones in here. He listened for the fake wall to open. Usually the big ones spent only a short time in here. Either in the box with a bin, or at the water. He hid in the box. He heard the fake wall open. Footsteps. It was a big one. He writhed with anticipation. Tilda. They sat in the stall, pants around their legs, panties too. Why now? Why an affirmation of womanhood, at the beginning of their transition? It was like having a cold sore on prom night. They always hated it. They weren't taught about it proper. Not until later in life, health class. She had to get them from the nurse back then. Blood is a sin, a red sin. That's what the Bible said, or something. They took a deep breath, and plugged the sin. It always felt like they were being watched. Candid camera. Look at the girl doing girl things with her body. Boys don't bleed, boys don't bleed. It was all too familiar, and yet they should feel happy, right? Things were going well, despite biology. They scrolled through their phone, not ready to face the others just yet. Tilda. He got her another tumbler filled with water, a lemon wedge even. A real gentleman. She had almost finished the second dinner now, but she was struggling. She chugged the water, citrusy salvation. It washed the cement from her throat, but she was bloated more than she thought possible. She brought the last forkful to her lips. Saliva, she couldn't bite down. Saliva rushed from under her tongue to lubricate her throat. She was going to be sick, like now. She tried to hold it. Tried to take that last bite, but no. She was a flash. She smashed through the bathroom door, banging on the occupied stall. She couldn't speak, the floodgates were about to open. Tilda. He was pleased. Sneaking the pill into her drink had been as easy as that. He was pleased at first, but then a mad dash. He had waited hopeful to watch that last bite. Damn, if only she had a gag reflex, such measures should not have been necessary. He rushed to follow her, straight into the woman's bathroom. She stood pounding on the stall door. He grabbed her, and whipped her around, and then sweet bliss. It wasn't supposed to be this way, but it was everything he wanted. She was a fire hose of half-digested bits and chunks. The smell of lasagna and stomach bile filled the bathroom. It had become him. He was washed with the meaty chunks. First his head, then his neck and chest. It was warm, the texture of baby food. He breathed in with delight. He threw off his sports jacket, ripped open his collared shirt. They would be ruined, yes, but the heavenly geyser was still baptizing him. Finally, he thought to himself, but then it stopped. It wasn't over, it couldn't be. She maybe expended half, that's why he bought two. He had to throw his glasses aside, and look for himself. After a quick eye wipe he saw the hose of Hosanna, but it was clogged. She couldn't gag it up. She was choking. She was standing there, right in front of the stall, choking. Her face lost color fast, in a moment. Her eyes seemed to roll to the back of her head. He did not know how to stop choking. He froze, and watched. He watched her dying body fall to the floor. And once she lay there, no longer blocking the stall door, the short-haired girl burst out from it. She rushed past him in a blaze of urgency. She had the right idea. It was a good time to cut this investment off early. He ran, out the back door. A regurgitated mess. No sports coat, no briefcase, not even his glasses. He had to get home, and clean up before the wife saw him. He was certain of that. Tilda. Mikey. Mikey. Nico. Mikey. Tanya. Anyone. They screamed in a panic. The whole restaurant turned upside down in an instant. Mikey, the first to respond. Your friend, here, she needs help. They grabbed Mikey B, and guided him into the women's room. They didn't see it happen, only heard. They heard the sounds of choking, the sound of someone on the brink of death. She lay there gurgling, a small stream of liquid digestion pooling in her mouth. It brimmed over the edge, and ran down her cheeks. She was unblinking there, sort of turning purple. Do something. They didn't know what to do themselves. They stood shaking. Oh God. A man could take control here. They looked to Mikey B. He seemed to be lifting her the best he could. The vomit absorbing into his work clothes. We have to beat it out of her, right? The Heimlich or whatever? He didn't seem to know what he was doing. Just then Nico burst through the door, followed by the others. He immediately jumped into action, without saying a word. He was not joking now, like he always did. Mikey B helped him hoist her from the floor, then he got behind her and thrusted. He was pounding on her chest so hard that they had to look away. Tanya was there too. She was on the phone with an emergency operator. It was like uncorking a bottle of champagne, only if the sparkling liquid was instead liquid lasagna. It splattered over them, the walls, the sinks. It was practically under their fingernails. They tried not to puke in response. Nico wasn't so fortunate, squeamish for a line cook. She isn't breathing. Tanya repeated the info into the phone. The operator asked if she knew CPR. She didn't. She started crying. I can't do CPR. She was a mess. They spoke up. I know how, at least I think. They had been a junior lifeguard at summer camp for 3 years, back when they were she. That was a long time ago, but they remembered the timing. Do it. Mikey B shouted, looking directly at them. I'll help, we don't have time, just do the mouth part and tell me when to pump. And so they did. Instant regret. There was no time to find a bar mop. There was no time to use a sleeve to wipe away the remnants of Tuesday's lasagna. They put their lips on the girl's mouth. It was repugnant, the taste of Italy. Little bits of ricotta cheese, mixed with yesterday's Jägermeister. They persisted under the pressure. They remembered the beat, yes. 1 2 3 they said calmly to Mikey B and they blew air in, plugging the nostrils. Again. Again, harder this time Mike. He complied. One last breath. It was all they had left, bits of another person's vomit smeared across their lips. They gave that breath, and the girl choked up one last heaping bit of chewed-up ruffled noodle. It was a disgusting rescue mission, but worth it. She was breathing. Poorly, but she was alive. They could hear sirens now. The cavalry had arrived. Their adrenaline subsided after that, and they puked. They puked, and Mikey B stood behind them crying. He was on a delivery. He took a quick break to get stoned. He parked his moped up in front as usual. The door was locked. It said, closed early. That was odd for his simple mind. Screamin' Al never closed early, and he was away. Were they playing hooky? He went around to the back, where he and Nico liked to get high. There was a note. The note read, Hey Tony, we all had to leave, emergency and shit. Go through the back, and close up. You need to clean the bathroom. Weird. He never seen nothing like this, and he'd seen quite a bit. He entered the restaurant, wondering what the hell happened. Tilda. What luck. Joyous day, behold, behold. They had left, all of them, and they left a mess no less. A mess fit for a king. It was the sauce and meat thing, but it was soupier, like sewer water. He tasted it, yes, glorious indeed. It was everywhere. His venture to the bins had not been in vain. He lapped it up graciously. It was spectacular. I had a faint tinge of the red to it. No doubt this was a production of the big ones, much like the pudgy red sticks. It was meaty even, the king liked meat, and so he indulged to his heart's and stomach's content. Tilda. He whistled as he walked to the bathroom, brandishing a mop bucket, mop in hand. He always liked cleaning the ladies' room. It was kind of gross, sure, but apparently the patrons had a tendency to ruffle up their tampons and throw them around the garbage bins. He thought that was funny. He walked through the door without knocking. He usually did, even during business hours. He also thought that was funny. What the fuck? It was everywhere. Vomit, puke, vile disgusting mess. He had to clean this. He scanned the room. There were bits of meat and cheese everywhere, mixed with sauce and stomach juice. It had a high velocity, even got on the ceiling for fuck's sake. He heard a skittering. Then again, and then he saw him. The first time even. He was in shock and awe, like a virgin on prom night. He was even bigger than originally anticipated. Lucifer. He kneeled in attempt to get a better look, but the great beast retreated to the corner. He laughed, he thought it was hilarious. Hey Lucy, do you want to clean this puke for me? He decided that was most funny. Lucifer hissed, a guttural hiss. He got a chill. He had to walk away. He went to find a weapon capable of destroying such a godly entity. He found a shovel, it would suffice. He would be the one that took down the devil himself. He would stand among his peers with new respect. He rushed into the bathroom to take the thing by storm. He slipped. He slipped on the vomit, and he cracked his head open. Then he was asleep. Tilda. Everyone went, of course, save for Tony. He had been on a delivery, but Nico left him a note. He wasn't sure what it read. He didn't care. They had all followed the ambulance to the hospital. Gustavo went home, but not before calling Screamin' Al to inform him of the early closure, and why. They all sat in a waiting room. They sat there far too long, all on their phones, unspeaking. Finally a nurse arrived. She is in an induced coma. Severe loss of oxygen to the brain, I'm afraid. Her voice was soothing, but sort of in that way that his voice was always soothing when he was at work. Do you know how bad it is? He wanted answers. He also wanted to rip the cock off of that fucking stock bitch. What was his name again? He was a dead man for sure. I'm sorry, who is the most immediate family member a doctor can talk to? There was a flash second of silence, and then, it was Chris. They had jumped from the seat. Obviously no real family members were here. He said nothing, he was curious what they would do. Only a cousin, but the fam is far away. They're asking me, but they should be the first to know. He shot them a sly look. A subtle smirk. They knew what they were doing. He could never pass as relatable to Sophie, but they could. What's Chris up to, Mike? He kept his composure. They know what they are doing. Hey Nico. The cook looked bored, but jumped at the name calling. Sup? He waved his head a bit in confusion. How'd you get so good at the Heimlich maneuver? He was actually curious. I took a class, bitch, I'm ServSafe certified. First time I ever had to do it though, I hope I didn't break your ribs. Tilda. The doctor spoke gently, several broken ribs. That is to be expected. That's the good news. A moment of silence. She is breathing, also good news. They couldn't take it. They were impatient. The bad news? He wavered only slightly, brain damage is almost a certainty. She was out long enough for that. They put their head between their knees. These were the conversations you needed to be sat down for. You saved her life. Without CPR, she would not have been alive by the time the paramedics got there. She is holding on, it is a time for prayer. He was gentle, but they hated that. They didn't pray. They didn't want what laid in that bed to be a vegetable. They thought, selfishly, of how often they wanted to have a first kiss. Though of all the boys they rejected, it just wasn't right. They always wanted to kiss a girl, and now, technically they had. Puke and all. It was certainly not what they had hoped it to be. The taste of ricotta still stuck in their mouth, and it was spoiling. Tilda. Yet another lucky break. The lights went out early, but an intruder. The small one of the big. It was thankfully the lesser, and he had failed to corner the king. And so he indulged of the liquid mixture. The elixir of rat, all for him. He thought of biting the small, taste his red, but the king rather liked the small. He was a harmless intruder, and so the king left him alone. Alone on the floor in the room of the pudgy red sticks. He went to venture forward. New gains were always around the corner here. The food place was a gift that kept on giving. Why should it not? He was a humble king after all. He spared the weak, but he wanted more cheesecake. Tilda. By the time he got home she was already there. It was a harrowing endeavor. No businessman should ever have to go through it. Thankfully she was in bed. He ran what was felt of his suit through the Washington. It was unworthy now, but he needed plausible deniability. He needed to get out of those lasagna-ridden clothes. It was a near capture for him, stupid. He couldn't help it, she was ripe like a piñata, bursting at the seams. The thrill of it encapsulated him still. The girl had dropped to the floor. She looked worse for wear, but surely the short-haired one had gotten help. He needed to get out, just like buying and selling. If it's too risky you get out. He wasn't known, maybe he could lay low. He often used the tactic at work, to jump at an opportunity. That was what he did today, and regardless of the girl, he didn't regret it. There was a slam. The bread truck. They usually came around 4 a.m. It woke him up. His clothes were wet with blood and the lasagna fluid. Lucifer had escaped him. He still had a mess to clean up. He was dizzy, but the bleeding had stopped. He rolled a joint. He managed to get the bathroom clean by 6 a.m. Then he took a nap on the bags of flour in the back room. Next time, he thought, as he dozed off, Next time the devil rat would be his trophy. Tilda. The Ukraine was a happy man. He rolled his shopping cart of empty beer cans along. It was a good day. God is good, and Jesus loves us all, he thought. He hadn't had a beer yet this morning, not matter. The intoxicants would flow like the blood of the one true Lord once he received his deposit. He was a lot like the Messiah himself. He had no greed, only goodwill. No home, but surely a heart to fill. He liked most to be in his cups. He liked people too. He walked down the cracked sidewalk as if it were paradise. The cart shook, he hummed a hymn in tandem with the jingling of his bounty of empties. Ahead a man. A big man. It was a big black man in fact. He had muscle, and a baby face. The Ukraine smiled at him. May the Lord be with you, friend. The man did not look to be so hospitable as he. He looked concerned, like he lost something. Might a good Samaritan such as yourself have $1.47 to spare? He always asked for exact change. He was beyond worldly things such as money, but he did need it to buy his booze. $1.47, the cost of a tall boy. It was in his nature to spread the good word, only fitting to ask for a cold one in return. God is good, he will provide through his word. Yahweh, it sounded like the name of a vintage frothy brew. He liked the idea. You seen Soph? His voice was deep, it was congruent with his concerned look. God sees all, my friend. I'm on my way to see the distributor. The man did not acknowledge his jovial approach. He held up a smartphone, stuck it right in the Ukraine's nose. Sophie, have you seen her? The picture on the screen portrayed a youthful woman, of fair skin. He knew not of this wayward child. My memory takes time to recall, and time is money. 2 sleek American tenders were thrown at him. The Washingtons. The $1 bills, but that was all that he needed. Sophie is the lamb, and you the shepherd. You are righteous, my friend. Through God all things are possible, through God so should you seek your wayward sheep. He snatched up the dollars hurriedly. Fuck off, Jesus freak, and keep the change. And so he departed on his pilgrimage to the liquor store. Some were unwilling to accept the Lord God. Yahweh. The $2 brought him great prosperity of froth and hops. He returned his bounty, and was awarded with intoxication. As it were in heaven, he thought, ready to mingle with the public at large. Tilda. He hated that Bible shit. Maybe not on a Sunday when he was at home with Mama Dukes. Baptists from birth, fitting, but that good book shit wasn't for the streets. God didn't carry a gun, he didn't back up the homies when it came down to it. You can't love thy neighbor when they are lovin' on your turf. Fuck that Ukraine hobo. He had to get all that Bible shit out his head. Wasn't important. Sophie didn't check in last night. She had sent him a message early, said she had a new client. He advised against it, but she said it was big gains. Seemed harmless. He didn't have no claim to Soph, sure she gave him a sort of commission to stand outside hotel rooms for an hour or so, but they were childhood friends. She was always on her phone, not one to reply late. She always answered his calls. She didn't have anyone else, at least not directly. If she didn't call him, if something was up, that meant a big problem. He didn't want to go to the police, didn't want to call the hospitals. And so instead he did the only thing he could think of. He called Screamin' Al. The conversation was awkward. Turns out Screamin' Al was waiting to board a plane back to New York. Something about an incident at the restaurant. That shit sound wild. He was shocked. Screamin' Al always had a story, but this one was indeed wild. He wondered about it. A girl, could be her, but the odds? Worth a shot. He wouldn't let that sort of shit happen to Soph. The more he thought, the more concerned he became. The text, the last one she sent. It was just about as bizarre as Screamin' Al's story. And so he went to the hospital, to inquire about his friend. Tilda. She woke. It was the next day, still early maybe? She couldn't tell. She had tubes in her, she couldn't move. Head hurt. Hospital? Her thoughts were like quicksand. It was like she was chewing on peanut butter better than lasagna. My God, she heard it faintly, and then they were upon her. Tests, lots of testing. Groggy, she tried her best, tried to answer when spoken to. She had a hard time speaking though. Something was wrong, really wrong. Health, it was all she could manage. Hair, she was at the mercy of the white coats. The tubes were gone now, mostly. She didn't know how long, but eventually a familiar face entered her field of view. It was Jungle. He always had a baby face, more so when it was pouring out tears like this. She could hear his sobs. Was it sadness? Happiness? She couldn't think straight. Young LLL. He grabbed her hand. His was a massive blanket of flesh over hers. It was comforting. I never should have let you go out like that alone, Soph. I know you can handle yourselves, but I never wanted to see you like this. I'm the gangbanger, Soph. I'm the one you spouse to become seen in a bed like this. She tightened the grip on him. Jungle, her big softie. Best friends at a young age, questionable career goals. SSS Rio, God, she couldn't talk. Not like she should be. Was it some kind of medicine? Another white coat entered. Jungle, is it? He nodded to the doctor, tears still falling freely from his eyes. A miracle, a true miracle. This one is a fighter. She reluctantly faded back out of consciousness.